Justine S. Hi Chris, I'm a huge fan of your YouTube channel and have watched quite a few of your videos. My question is, how come LRH wrote, communication is the key component of life itself, and that through communication any problem could eventually be resolved if both parties keep trying, and yet he later wrote policies to punish or expel people who communicated their disagreements, upsets regarding Scientology. Sounds like he was a hypocrite, and that he basically wrote policies that were against his early principles. Please explain why you think LRH did this. Love everything you do regarding raising awareness of destructive cults. Please continue. Yeah, you nailed it here. And again, this was something I was actually going to do a whole video on at one point, because it is the basic hypocrisy of Hubbard and Scientology that in the early and mid 1950s in a book called Dynetics 55, which is where you quoted from, this is a book all about communication, and it was one of the first things in fact, it was the first book, I think, that I read in Scientology, because I did that big communications course when I first came in. And I had to, really study that book pretty intensively, and I loved what Hubbard said about communication. I thought it was essential. He calls communication the universal solvent. It dissolves all things, because you can communicate and resolve so much. And so, so the whole concept of which came later, of disconnection, the way Hubbard wrote it doesn't sound hypocritical, and it was really how it was practiced that became hypocritical. The way Hubbard wrote it is that disconnection is something you use as a last resort only in instances where the person you're disconnecting from is actively, physically causing you either spiritual or emotional trauma, psychological upset, or whatever, or is physically hurting you or damaging you by their presence in your life. And of course there are such people. If you had a sociopathic boss or an abusive husband or a cousin or something who did nothing but insult and belittle you every time they saw you, you'd be like, yeah, I don't really want that person around. They're just negative and they create a negative impression in my life, and I don't need that. And you don't need that, right? And so you just kick that person out of your life. And Scientology made that sort of a procedure or a method that's used in order, because, if somebody, the theory is that Hubbard wrote, this is what he actually wrote, is that, if you had such a person constantly invalidating you and what he called suppressing you, pushing you down and always on your case and that sort of thing, it would get in the way of you trying to, your counseling, you trying to become a better person. Here you are trying to become a better person through your counseling. You come to realize things, you're pretty happy about your life, and then you go home and you're getting beat or abused, or you're running into your, this cousin every few days, right? And this sort of thing, and they're belittling you and telling you that Scientology's stupid and you're stupid and everything's stupid about you and you can't do anything right and all that. So that doesn't sound so hypocritical. What happened is that this tool called disconnection turned into, very rapidly, a political tool of control in Scientology. Now, whether Hubbard first intended for that to happen with it or not, I have no clue, and nobody else does either. But it did become that very quickly. And of course, we know that Hubbard was not on the up and up, and so it's not hard for me there's no stretch of my imagination to think that this was why he wrote this stuff in the first place, and only put it in really nice terms. But what he really wanted to do was just have another mechanism to control people's lives. And so this was used to disconnect new Scientologists from their parents or from their loved ones or whatever, because they were giving them a hard time and all that. Now, there was a point where disconnection got, it came out in the late 60s, it got canceled, but maybe only in name only. However, I've been told by a couple people who were around back then that it wasn't just in name only, that it really did stop being done, that people were not disconnecting just like that with family and friends and whatnot who were against Scientology. They really were trying to deal with and handle them. But move forward to the early 1980s, and it comes back in with a bang, right? And that's, that's Hubbard, that's Miscavige, and now this control mechanism is there, and it becomes a point of blackmail as well, where Scientologists are kept in Scientology, because if you leave, then of course you're gonna get disconnected from everybody, and that becomes emotional blackmail, right? So, so that's sort of the progress of that and the hypocrisy of it, and I think that's why that happened.